The Legion's Exorcist, a novel of God's Legion, by J.T. Dowdy. Chapter 9. A hard day's work keeps the taint of impure thoughts at bay. It does not matter your assigned job, your title, or your feelings on the matter. When you work while keeping the litanies of faith burning in your hearts and minds, heresy cannot touch you. Just like idle hands being the devil's playground, so too are idle minds brought on by monotonous yet necessary work. You must always guard your mind against the slow, insidious corruption of the alien thoughts which run contrary to the dictates of the true faith. Excerpt from a sermon on the nature of prayer while at work. Lilith joined Norman on the gremlin gunship Julia had brought down from orbit. Elilith gave her a quizzical look as the female creator reached up to grab one of the swinging handholds occupants used when not sitting in the transport's acceleration couches. Lilith was mumbling to herself as if about to enter a grocery store, so she would not forget her itemized list. The creator realized she was talking to herself, and seemed to become more present and alert as she looked to the host angel and said, "Woman's intuition." "That is so vague and cryptic as to make me worried," Elilith replied. "Care to tell me why you feel like you will be needed on a simple fact-finding mission?" "I am not my father, and so my prescience has the ability to be wrong. Let's just say there are many paths the immediate future may take, and it would be better to be cautious." Elilith's cold stare caused the creator to sigh and continue. "There is a roughly 7% chance there will be a being of spirit present which could overpower you. Besides, it was my turn to help cook in the galley tonight, with the main course being that fermented cabbage junk the Foshar people like. I can't stand the smell of it." Julia snorted while shaking her head side to side. Since they would be dealing with data, she had elected to accompany them to the planetary archives. I told Baphomet to not accept that contingent, but did he listen to me? Of course not. Their food and soap smell so bad it makes me want to open the doors and vacuum all of their rooms out into space. Wow. Just tell them what you really think about them. "Meh," Julia grumbled. "They are better than some of the other smaller factions the old man has picked up over the years. The worst were the Sarsa." Lilith grimaced and nodded her head. "Yeah, those guys had a powerful stank." Norman knew the Legion's unimaginable size meant they were the parent faction of millions, if not billions, of other sentient species. But he had never heard of such a people, either in life or from any of the history documentaries he liked to watch when he was bored. "Who are the Sarsa?" he asked. "They are not around in three-dimensional space anymore," Julia supplied. "They were the result of one of Creator L's genetic experiments. Basically, they were bipedal lizards with short tails that only reached their knees. Their music was nothing but hisses, maracas, and rain tubes, and their voices were like radio static. Gods. Their food was the worst-smelling, fermented, spicy trash you have ever come across. The results of their diet was a harsh, rotten egg smell mixed with sulfur and methane. Each one of them had this bubble of fart gas, which seemed to just follow them around like an angry, depressed cloud. Most people couldn't stand working with them because of their peculiar, nauseating aroma. They were good people, though," Lilith added, as the gunship's side doors closed and the pilot fed power to the Agrav drives. "They really would give you the shirt off of their backs if you could stand to wear it. But as a whole, they wanted to go to the higher dimensions because they knew they were made, and by whom. As a people, they wanted to find God, and they were not capable of accepting the old man's presence in three-dimensional space as God, since there are higher dimensions. It did not matter how many times we tried to explain to them that God preferred a more limited existence down here in the third dimension. As a culture, they just refuse to believe that God would slum it down here rather than being in basically what your culture tells you is paradise, Norman. Now the exorcist was curious. Did they ever find what they were looking for? He asked. Their version of God, I mean? Lilith shook her head. No, most of them died after making it to the fifth dimension. The exorcist's confused look prompted Lilith to continue. Mortals in the third dimension can easily move to the fourth, as the concept of time there moves as it does down here, in a linear fashion. The problem with the fourth is the 2 extra directions we do not have, but a mind can get used to looking at things with extra angles. Their mortal minds could not understand the extra direction of time in the fifth, and most of them died there, except for the really young children, whose minds are more malleable and thus adaptable, and the people we would consider insane. Didn't you tell them what would happen? I did, many times. Monstrous, Norman exclaimed. You should have stopped them if you knew what would happen. Lilith looked pained as she hung her head in either acceptance or shame. My father's free will also extends to people's actions, Norman. It is not just the ability to have free thought that he holds dear. You might think it is evil for him to allow such things to happen, but he gave them informed consent and explained exactly what would happen to them. We all did. Yet they still wanted to go, and he would not stand in their way, even knowing what would happen to the majority. He gave the survivors the best care possible, and their descendants are doing quite well since they were born to the fifth dimension, and their minds know nothing else. And before you argue with me, consider this. Perhaps his actions are why he is God, and you are not. By stopping the Sasa people from doing what they collectively wished, a precedent would have been set for telling everyone who came after them what to do. The Sasa were not the first to make such decisions, and they will not be the last. Free will must be for everyone at all times, or it is meaningless. 30 seconds to dirt. The pilot called back into the troop compartment. Decurion Fisher and her 9 soldiers had already been standing, holding on to the handles above their heads. At some unseen command from the officer, Norman saw all 10 of the legionnaires vanish from sight as their optical camouflage kicked in. Both side doors of the gremlin slid open to let the outside air rush in. True to the pilot's experience and instruments, 30 seconds later, the gunship came to a hovering stop exactly 1 foot above the ground. Norman followed Julia's pink vest onto the planet's surface and was immediately sucker-punched in the chest from the gunship's heat wash, which took his breath away. The planetary administration building was typical Host Ascendency construction, meaning it was ecclesiastical in nature. It was a massive building which would have appeared to be just a cathedral to anyone else. But to a host citizen, the subtle differences marked it as what it was, rather than just a church. The high vaulted ceilings and intricate stained glass windows were comforting to Norman as he walked into the complex with the rest of the group, since he had spent the majority of his life on heaven in such surroundings. It is a comfort, isn't it? Elilith asked. This question surprised the exorcist, as the host angel typically did not talk to him unless he asked her a direct question. Yes, he replied. Word of the angel's arrival had spread, and a pair of golden-armored guardsmen hurriedly opened a set of doors to stand at attention as the group passed, though they eyed the rest of the party with overt suspicion. The angel continued to speak as she looked around. I fear our Legion cousins could learn a lot about beauty if they would be more willing to embellish their structures a little. Though, as you have seen, the Legion Master cares little for such things. Julia laughed. You have not been paying attention, then. He does have an eye for beauty, but he makes his beauty while the rest of us try to copy him." Elolith grunted as a fat, flushed-faced functionary came waddling up, flanked by a dozen guardsmen who were eyeing the creator and woman in pink warily. The fat man was bald and wiped at his sweating head and neck with a silken handkerchief so as to not stain his suit's collar. "Your Eminence," he said, dropping to one knee as the guardsman did the same. "Rise," Elolith commanded, taking the lead of the party to cut through as much red tape and arguments as possible. "You are the superintendent of this world?" There was a slight pause from the man as he chuckled. "No, Holy One. Forgive me, I am Deputy Superintendent Francisco Espinosa. The superintendent is on the eastern continent dealing with internal matters. Rest assured, Your Grace, I will be at your complete disposal to assist with any matters you require." While not an archangel, and afforded the title of Your Grace, the fat man was being obsequious. Elolith nodded and gestured forward, deeper into the governmental building. "I need access to planetary records." The deputy superintendent did not look up at the angel, but he did look up at the still-in-uniform Norman Kant, then pointedly at the obvious other beings of spirit and woman in the pink vest. "Of course, Your Grace. Please follow me." After a few minutes of walking deeper into the gargantuan for the sake of impressing people-building, the awkward silence was making the functionary nervous, as one of his people's holy angels was right next to him. "Would you like a tour as we go, Your Grace?" "Of course," Lilith replied cheerfully. "I'm sorry, madam. My question was not for you." The creator broke into a broad grin, and from what Norman knew of Legion culture and how they thought, he also smiled at the inevitable argument. "I know, but am I not also divine in your society?" The deputy administrator turned around to stare at the much larger woman who towered over Elolith and frowned. The question had caught him off guard. Elolith made the introduction. "This is Creator Lilith." "The Temptress!" Francisco screamed, backing away from the group and gesturing to the startled guardsman to shoot her. "Stand still!" Elolith barked, and the guardsman obeyed without question. "Your Grace, you cannot allow such evil to—" The angel cut the man off. "I have been with her for 500 years, you idiot. If she wanted to kill me, I think she has had ample time to do so. In case you missed the memo, mortal, this is a woman deserving of your respect. You will address her and treat her exactly as if she was me. Got it?" The deputy superintendent was sweating like an animal now. "I don't." The man stammered in confusion. Then the conditioning of all Host Ascendency citizens took over, and he bowed his head in obedience to a superior's command. "Thy will be done," he said. "Please follow me, Your Eminences." For some reason, Norman found the whole situation funny. Lilith's voice sounded in his mind for the first time. "Do not show any reaction to my voice." The deputy administrator reached into his pocket and pushed his panic button. "We will be having company soon. Be prepared to receive visitors." "You can do this?" Norman thought back in wonder. "Of course I can. I forced the conversation with the mortal to bring about this situation because it would come up eventually." "What is the point of this?" There was a long pause before the voice of the Creator spoke again. The Inquisitor did not return all of the way to heaven before contacting Raphael. He issued new orders via QCOMs, and she is following those orders. She has the potential to be here today if the commander of the task force she commandeered pushes his ships hard and requests emergency military priority through the gates. Jophiel and Raguel are also coming with your Mother Mary, and that is going to turn this whole matter into one giant, confused issue if we do not hurry. I thought you said you couldn't predict the future with accuracy. Norman swore he felt an overwhelming sadness, though the strange mental connection, as Lilith said. My accuracy is not anywhere near what my father is cursed with. But I have been doing this for a long time, and can piece together the logical outcome of a given event or set of circumstances. Norman walked in silence for a while, as the deputy administrator pointed out the various wings of the building and their functions. Word had spread of the angel's arrival, probably through the guardsman's radio communications, and there were throngs of people all kneeling or prostrating themselves on the floor to receive an angel's blessings. Now that Norman was walking with several beings of spirit, he had the time to look around at the people. He came to a conclusion while looking at the abased mortals that they were cowering more out of fear than religious observance, fear of the party, and of thus him. Creator Lilith? He asked in his mind, wondering if the woman could hear him. Yes, my son. The Creator's voice came back, with the amused feeling he often had talking with novice acolytes who had questions. These people, he said, searching for the right words, they are afraid of us. They are afraid of you. Most mortals are, but what exactly is your question? I think I better understand your people's view on such actions now, as I do not like being looked at in terror as people plead for whatever their viewpoint on salvation is. They are looking at me as if I am about to kill them or cast them into the pit. I don't like this feeling. The Creator dropped back to speak verbally with the exorcist as the group passed through a set of giant gilded double doors. There are few of us in the Legion who want to be feared or adored in this manner. Some do, but I find this revolting. It is also very unnecessary. I know who I am, and I do not need to be reminded of it every moment of the day. The deputy administrator missed the point of the conversation as they passed yet another group of fawning mortals, and said, "Do not try and tempt a priest of the true faith, heretic. Our people have faith in the word of God. You demons have no right to." Whatever he was about to say will remain a mystery for all time, as Elilith moved faster than sight to slap the mortal in the face hard enough to snap his neck. "Our people have been fed nothing but lies and false hopes." The angel spat at the cowering mortals around her. Her fury made them shrink back from her. People began to flee before the anger of their angel were to turn on them. "You," Elilith pointed to the sergeant of the guardsmen, "continue leading us to the central archives." The mortal in golden armor looked down at the dead man who, up until a moment ago, was the second highest ranking individual on the planet. He snapped to attention and did the only thing he could. "Thy will be done, Your Eminence," he said, before giving orders to his men to remove the body of the deputy administrator, then set a brisk pace deeper into the building. After a few moments, Lilith asked, "Was that really necessary?" The angel's voice was hard. "You are not a demon. It was only words. I can assure you we have been called far worse from far greater people." The host angel was about to reply, then sighed heavily. "I do not see how you have put up with such behavior for so long, considering what you do for all of us behind the scenes. Your people go through hell and back, so that ignorant fools can live their simple lives in moderate safety, and you never receive the thanks you deserve." "Elilith," Lilith said, "please do not kill important people we might need from now on. True, he called us names and meant them, but we did not come kill you when you called us the same things in the past. Ignorance was built into your religion to foster a closeness of belief. Yes, it may be wrong, but these people cannot help it. They do not know anything other than what they have been allowed to know. Normans considered the Creator's words. Here was an angel who certainly had more conditioning built into the very fabric of her being than he had ever experienced in his short life. He suddenly understood why she was struggling with the concept of her faith being broken with moody outbursts. No doubt Lilith and the others have sat down with her for long periods of time, and even with those sessions, she was still struggling. It also became clear why she avoided speaking to him. The angel was afraid of talking to someone who would reintroduce old thoughts into her mind. A thought came suddenly to Norman's mind. He was handling his new circumstances far better than a divine angel of his faith. Someone who should be intrinsically better at all things. Elilith had been with the party for several hundred years and was still struggling, while he had not been here for even a handful of weeks. "Stay out of this, please." Lilith's voice sounded in Norman's mind. "I have been working on curbing her more violent tendencies. When she rejected her faith, she threw herself into ours to stay sane. She is having difficulties adjusting, as you just figured out. Of course, it should not need to be said to never repeat this to anyone." The central archives of Emerald Forest were a triplicate system. One section was a vast digital databank, and the other was a large written library. The triplicate backups were located off-planet deep underground on Heaven in a secured data vault that was updated once a month in a massive data dump. The guardsman sergeant led the group to a series of terminals manned by armies of acolytes who hurriedly typed in all new data before passing off their written records to their peers to be archived by hand, either in tomes or seemingly billions of sectioned filing cabinets. Once his duty had been finished, Elilith dismissed the sergeant and his men to return to their duties. Each computer station had large desks around them, which were overflowing with written reports and other items to be entered. Acolytes ran in never-ending streams to provide various stimulant drinks and to relieve their brothers and sisters in their labors. The group of immortals found their way over to one of the cubicle of a more senior archivist. The nameplate above the flimsy cubicle read, "Senior Clerk Decker Tomball." The old man at the desk looked up in shock before falling out of his chair to kneel before the angel. "Holy One," he said in an awed voice, "how may I serve you?" Elilith replied as she made a gesture for the mortal to rise. "I need you to tell me if a mortal woman, known as Felicity Masters, has ever booked passage off of this world. We looked for her at her last known place of occupation, but she was not there, and no one there knew where she went. Of course, Holy One, I should be able to clear this matter up for you quickly." The senior archivist clicked away at the ancient mechanical keys on his terminal and copied the image from his hollow screen to one where the angel could see what he was doing. "Felicity Masters, if I am spelling it right, the records show there are currently 374 people with that name on Emerald Forest as of right now. Do you have anything which could narrow your search? A middle name or birth date, perhaps? Any information you have would be helpful." Elilith nodded. "All we know is she worked at a brothel called Salvation, and she has a male child at or under 7 years of age." The mortal typed in the additional information, and the numerous names on the screen went away to be replaced with nothing. "I'm sorry, Your Eminence. Our records show there is no such person you described on this planet currently, and there never was. Are you sure this was the correct name and place of work?" The angel looked to Norman, who shrugged to say he did not know if that was her real name. She looked back to the mortal behind the desk and said, "I do not know if that was her real name. Can you see if any woman with a 7-year-old or younger child has left the planet recently?" The senior archivist dutifully typed in the query, and the screen showed over several thousand matches to the request. Julia's eyes were darting back and forth as she hacked into and combed the vast database after touching the man's printer on his desk. Norman could not see them, but a string of nanites had poured from the woman's body to bridge the connections needed to interface with the computer system and set up a back door for future access. Julia's eyes stopped moving, and she shook her head in the negative. Before the senior archivist could protest, Elilith looked him straight in the eye and said, "This is a matter concerning the security of the Host Ascendency. You are hereby ordered to make no record of our visit. I am also ordering you to speak of this to no one but me. Take us to the hard copy section and show us where to find the files on the business known as salvation." The old mortal swallowed hard as the cold eyes of his people's angel informed him of the consequences of disobeying the directives given to him. He typed in the query, which showed him the location of the requested records, and stood up to lead the group right to it. Norman found himself riding on a multi-seat conveyance. The vehicle's electric motor was badly in need of maintenance, if the squealing growl was anything to go by. They had been driving through a seeming never-ending maze of towering racks of shelves, filled to capacity with filing cabinets and stacks of books. Loose papers were arranged in their own stacks with heavier books placed on top to keep the pages from flying away. 47 minutes later, of fast driving, the senior archivists turned a corner down aisle S2, 387. He slowed down as he was reading the identification tags until coming to a stop. "Here we go," the senior archivist said. "The files you want are between these two sections here." He held out both hands to gesture between two of the labeled sections. The section indicated was over 30 yards wide and double that in height. There was a mobile lift system nearby to get to the items above normal height. "Gods!" Lilith groaned. "This is going to take a minute." "Would you like assistance in your search, Holy One?" the old mortal asked, looking at the angel of his faith. "I can have a squad of acolytes here within the hour to do this for you." "No," Elilith replied, looking the mortal in the eyes again. "The fewer people who know we were here, the better for host security. You have done your duty admirably. Find your own way back, as we will be borrowing your transport." The senior archivist frowned, thinking of the many hours-long walk he would have to endure. Yet he nodded, as a good host citizen should, and bowed deeply before turning to begin his long walk back to his cubicle. Once the mortal was gone, Norman saw one of the boxes at waist height slide out and be opened by invisible hands. The voice of Decurion Fisher came from where the box was floating in the air. "This will take days to go through, unless someone can narrow this search down." "Find me a box or cabinet labeled Sanctuary 43, Julia said. "From what I gathered in the database, this should have what we are looking for." "Should have?" Norman muttered. "If it is not in the database, why would it have been filed back here?" The Legion sentience spoke as if to a young child. "Because digital records are always easier to edit." "Gotcha," the Exorcist replied, feeling foolish. "Wouldn't whoever deleted the data files come back here to destroy the physical records?" "Priest," Julia laughed. "In the section we are looking in, there are over 1.5 million individual pieces of paper, and over 450 books which could be classified as tomes. The likelihood someone did that is in the single digits." Several hours later, Julia was staring at the box they needed, along with all of the papers laid out on the floor. Lilith had a smile on her face, as if she had known all along, while Elilith had been pacing back and forth after helping to lay the papers out. "Holy crap," Julia found herself saying. "A literal 3% chance, And they actually did it. The nearby boxes had also been opened and laid out to make sure someone had just not been lazy and shoved the records in the closest place. There had been a few archivists driving by the main aisles on their own conveyances, loaded down with paperwork to be filed, all of them making faces, as they knew they would be the ones putting the piles back where they should be. Unsurprisingly, after looking at the mountains of loose paperwork, they all wisely decided to not get involved unless told by their superiors to do so. "Is there video surveillance in here?" Norman asked. "Yes, and I have already hacked into the network and watched all of the saved video footage for the past 15 years. The exorcist's mind stuttered for a moment as he tried to process that statement. "With what time?" "I think at light speed, priest," Julia complained. "Once I was flesh and blood, but that was so long ago. I do not remember what it felt like. Trust me, all footage of this aisle has been erased so thoroughly I cannot piece it back together again. We came all this way for nothing." "So, we have no clue where to go next?" Julia paused, then shook her head. "There is one last thing we could try, but I would need Elilith or Lilith to contact the Displacement Gate Network Administration. More specifically, I need them to contact Gabriel to access the local travel logs. Or we would need to go to heaven and be allowed access into the backup vault." Elilith blew a raspberry and snorted. "Gabriel might help me, but that's a big if." Lilith's eyes narrowed as she bit down on the end of her thumb to think. "We could try asking Elohim. He is the one individual who could get us that information and not broadcast our intentions to who knows who.